Hi everyone, I am so excited to see you. It is not a coincidence that you and I are sharing this moment right now. Do you know I've been working as a medium for over 25 years, and my eyes are so wide open right now and focused on this deep inner need of an awakening. Like life is consciously connecting to all that is. So I've decided to create the Lighter Side Network, where each show and each host reminds us how the everyday meets the extraordinary. Be it in the realm of mindfulness and healthy living, having an empowered and authentic life with humor, trusting your intuition and communicating with beyond, energy healing and releasing unconscious obstacles, astrology, living in your joy and truth, and so much more. Join us as we share our knowledge and experiences with you. We're going to have so much fun.
Hi everybody, my name is Laura Boone.
Hi, my name is Ursula Lentini.
Hey everyone, I'm Thershna Patel.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Karen.
Join me on my show.
Are you ready?
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
Only on the Lighter Side Network.
The Lighter Side Network, where the everyday meets the extraordinary. That's us.
Okay, so I always say hi everybody at the beginning of every episode, and Jesse and I are laughing right now trying to figure out a new thing to say. I've had a lot of you comment on the Vimeo page about my southern accent, so I think I'm going to just start saying hi y'all. Is that okay, Jesse?
I love it. I love y'all.
Hi y'all.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that people outside of the southeastern United States, in my opinion, have an accent. People down here, I haven't heard an accent. Have you?
No.
No, exactly. So, Ellen Turner
Hi, y'all.
is here today, and for those of you who don't know my history or my background, Ellen is actually my work wife. Would you say that? Mm-hmm. She is my business partner and helped me start Turner Boone, which is the company I've talked about on the show. And her name's Ellen Turner and I'm Laura Boone, so we're the Turner Boone. But we are not here today to talk about our business. We are here today to do an additional show on my Enneagram series. And today we're bringing the hammer down. That's right. We're going to talk about eights. And Ellen is an 8 expert, are you not?
Very much so.
She is a walking example of 8. And she is very brave today, which is an 8, right? To come on here and really talk about her journey with the Enneagram. You know, Ellen and I have actually even done therapy together for a company. We do coaching to help run our company business-wise, which could be another great topic for a show one day. But in the midst of that, she and I discovered the Enneagram, and we both have worked with the Enneagram with our own lives and also individually. And it's really helped us a lot, and we've done this for years. So I can't wait to hear from Ellen about her journey in becoming the best 8 she can be. And the other thing, we're trying not to torture our employees by asking them all their numbers all the time. We do that.
Well, you don't ask them. You go, she's a...
Well, I know, because I'm intuitive.
Right.
Because I'm a 4.
Right.
So I just know.
Right. We don't have to look up the book.
Yeah, but now we speak the language. We're like, oh, it's just being a 3. Oh, she's a 2. So this is how we need to treat her birthday.
Right.
It's a secret weapon. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Guess what? It's not secret anymore.
Right.
Because we just said it on a show. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll stop chit-chatting and get down to business. I want to first talk about 8s in general before we get into digging into your journey, okay? Sure. What is an 8? An 8, you know, as you guys know, and I hope you watched my previous episode where Manira and I went through all 9 numbers in brief so that everybody can get a taste of what each number is. But an 8, you know, every number has a nickname, if you will. And the 8 is called the challenger. The 8 also, in some sources, is called the entrepreneur or the leader. Those are the 3 words I've always heard it described as. But in my trusty book, which I hope all of you have gotten by now, which is The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Richard Rizzo and Russ Hudson, this is just a great starting point, you guys. And I'm going to use some of the information out of this book that I think is really to the point. But some of the buzzwords for 8, the leader, the protector, the provider, the entrepreneur, the maverick, the rock. So those are just some great adjectives, I would say. Now, I don't know if we talked about this in my general show, but in the Enneagram, and Ellen knows this, every type has a scale from like 1 to 10 generally, where they are disintegrated. In other words, when they're really under stress, they behave a certain way. And then there's a gradation scale, if you will, of behavior to when they're being their best self. And they call that integration. So it's disintegration to integration. And every single type, there's not a good type and there's not a bad type. Every single type has their qualities that are some of the best qualities in humanity. They're like archetypes. So 8 at their best is really the hero and the leader and the strong one who kind of jumps ahead and protects the group. And at their worst can be the oligarch, the very disintegrated leader, the sociopath, the narcissist, the abuser. So every single type has the low level and the high level. So the great thing, even if you're not an 8 or you don't know anybody that's an 8, for you to learn some of the qualities of an 8, everybody can use some of those qualities. I mean, everybody can find some of those good 8 qualities in themselves. So when you are around an integrated number, they will be an example of some of the best things that type offers, and we can all practice some of those things. So all the integrated numbers teach us something. So I love that about the Enneagram. So if you're not an 8, this show is still very useful to you. So what I wanted to do, I just talked about integrated and disintegrated, and I wanted to read a couple of quotes by 2 very famous 8s. And one quote is from a very disintegrated 8, and one quote is from a very integrated 8. The disintegrated quote is by Niccolo Machiavelli, and that's a very famous book, you guys. Do you know that book? Mm-hmm. It's called The Prince by Machiavelli. Machiavelli was a strategist in ancient Italy, and he wrote books on war. He wrote books on how to maneuver and get power, and not by ethical means, by any means necessary. And people literally looked at these as reference books. He was highly intelligent, and a lot of people, in a very disintegrated way, use his books, to win, essentially.
That's where the term Machiavellian comes from.
Yep, that's right, Jesse. If you've heard the term Machiavellian, that's right. And it typically means somebody who will stop at nothing to gain power or to grab power, and they will, run over anybody to get it. But anyway, famous quote, I'm going to read it. From this arises the question whether it is better to be loved rather than feared, or feared rather than loved. It might perhaps be answered that we should wish to be both, but since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. Okay, she's laughing.
So I used to think.
Right?
Right.
So do you understand that quote?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Survival.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Because we talked about, we haven't gotten to your basic fear yet, but we'll just jump there for a second. Basic fear of an 8, being harmed or controlled by others. Fear of violation. So every type, you guys, has a basic fear, and that's the 8's basic fear. So that's where they come motivated from. We'll get back to that. But Machiavelli in that quote is speaking from that basic fear, which I love. I don't love that he said that, but I love that matches. So here's a polar opposite 8 Martin Luther King Jr. Did you know he was an 8?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Wow. I didn't know this before I read this. And when I saw that, I don't know, my heart swelled because he's the most integrated 8 I've ever
When I
thought
tell
about.
people I'm an 8 and they're like, who else is an 8? I say MLK. I don't say Machiavelli.
Good thinking. Very strategic. Yeah. Okay, so here's his quote. Man must evolve for all human conflict, a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. Wonderful. I mean, Martin Luther King is a great example. I want to talk about this for a minute of when an 8 is integrated. First of all, they're the strongest types, I would have to say. They bring the most strength and willingness to stand up and take it.
And it is very much about the energy. Their strength is the energy that they project out into the world, which is why when it's disintegrated, it's so awful. The impact is so awful for the people in contact with them. But when it's integrated, it's extremely powerful. And 8s think that the power has to be overt and in the face, but not at all. That's where the true strength comes from is the energy that you're putting towards what you're being strong about and how you're doing it. Mm-hmm. Not that you're showing outwardly that you're going to stand up to something from a physical standpoint of strength.
Mm-hmm. That could not have been better put, but that's why she's on the show, because she's an 8 and she can speak about it in that way. And I know, so I've been in part of this learning with Ellen because we run a company together. And I know one thing that kind of speaks to what you just said about an 8. So if you're wondering if somebody that you're close to is an 8 or if you're an 8, 8s, whether they realize it or not, when they walk through a door or they sit down at a table, they, at their worst, take up all the air in the room. At their best, you can't, whether they're speaking or not, they have this presence.
Right.
They have this power and strength about them. It's their energy.
And I didn't understand that for the longest time until I started understanding the Enneagram and having people smarter than me explain this to me. Even you know,
Be a mirror.
Yeah, be a mirror. And I didn't realize that I was having any kind of impact, good or bad. Mm-hmm. But when I got that as an 8, I wanted it obviously to always be good. So, when we're jumping ahead here, but to integrate, we go to 2, which is a loving place. And so, in my learnings on how to do this and how to be better, I always have to go to, is it loving? Is it kind? Am I energetically feeling that regardless of what I'm having to go deal with or do? Is it coming from a good, loving place?
Isn't that amazing? Because that's exactly what Martin Luther King's quote was about.
Right.
He was talking about moving from the power that, in a very unconscious way, we all connect with, which is, I have to be aggressive.
Right.
I have to fight.
And that is, as a young 8, that was all I knew. Mm-hmm. And that's what I went to. That was my go-to. Mm-hmm. That's how I survived.
And speaking of when you're a younger 8, the childhood pattern for 8s, and every type has a childhood environment that helps them come along. I think you're born this way, but then your environment helps. But every 8, in some form or another, had to, and I want you to speak to this, had to be an adult too young or at a young age. They were very independent on their own and then felt like they had responsibility and or they had the power that no one else around them had, or they had more power than people around them and they would take care of it. I mean, what was your childhood like to sprout an 8?
Well, first of all, it was the 70s.
Right.
So
different time.
people didn't lock their doors and kids left at sunup and came back at sundown. And, I had, what I now realize, now having my own child, I had very little adult supervision from about 5 on. Probably younger than that. and I kind of ran the show. Whether anyone else was aware of it, I was really aware of it. Mm-hmm. And
then I know your parents got divorced.
Parents got divorced.
I think your dad, who I adored her father, God rest his soul, he was an 8.
He was also very much an 8.
But when he left the home, you were the big boss at times, energetically, in the
absolutely.
family.
Well, and he worked a lot, so I already was anyway. He was never really there. And then when he was there, it was this. Because it was 2 8s that were in charge.
Right.
I was just a little
It was
shorter
a power struggle.
and younger.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There are many stories from my hometown about the literal power struggle that physically would play out in front of the whole town with me and my father.
With you and your dad. Mm-hmm. Now,
I don't mean he never beat me or anything because he couldn't catch me.
yeah, well, he was probably afraid to.
Well, yeah.
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 I'm kidding, but I'm not really.
Right.
So, but the other stories that I remember you telling me about your childhood, which to me are so 8, you know, her mother would be like, we can't afford a new refrigerator. You'd
Well,
be
my
like,
dad was very frugal, and I thought I grew up in the poorest household in the county. Unbeknownst to me, my father was just extremely frugal. So that summer I was 14 or 15, and we had a refrigerator, my mom said, for the same one for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And we needed a new one, so I went to work at the Giant Mart. I rode my bike every day, and by the end of the summer, I'd made close to $700 and bought her a refrigerator.
Right. I mean, but I think that speaks, though, to when people say no to an 8, they
No.
reject that. They just reject
Right.
it.
Well, even in our business, you've told me I couldn't do something knowing it needed to get done, so I would go do it. I mean, it's
I
very
manipulate her, is
Right,
what she's saying,
she
which
does.
I admit.
It's
I
very
do.
primal, though. It's
Yeah.
like you don't tell an 8 no unless you want that to actually go happen.
But the other thing is, I mean, Ellen, so provider, she was being a provider at 14. The other thing here is she would start these little businesses, entrepreneur. It's a big descriptor of an 8. And you were starting companies when you were
10.
10.
Rent-A-Kid.
Rent-A-Kid.
We had little flyers, and then you could rent any of my friends, including myself, for $5 an hour in the summer to do any odd job.
And so, and I'll just fill in the blanks. So she was leading. That's the other descriptor. She was the leader, and all these kids, even older than her, would come to her, and she was their boss. And it wasn't something you were trying to be, it's something you just were. It's
Right.
not, I mean, you weren't thinking of it in those terms. You were just doing it.
Yeah, right. For me, it's never been about a title, or I don't need all that. I just need people to do what I need them to do.
You need to
You can
be,
call me whatever.
yeah, you need to be in control, which, let's talk about that, because that's one of these. So the basic fear we talked about was of being harmed or being controlled by others.
Right.
So in other words, you want control.
Complete.
Complete control.
That's when I'm comfortable.
That's when you're comfortable. Your basic desire, and everybody, by the way, guys, in the book, everybody has different basic fears, basic desires, and a superego. But your basic desire is to protect themselves and to determine their own course.
Yeah.
The superego says you are safe and okay if you're in control. Now, when they talk about the superego here, that is the thing that can trip you up and is truly the lie. It's where you run into trouble. And and again, we're going to get into every number, guys, but for an 8, that's what you've got to unravel and unpack the rest of your life.
Right.
And you talked earlier, and I want to get into this. Each type has an integration and a disintegration. When you integrate to 2, 8s integrate to 2. 2 is known as the giver. 2 is the connector. Okay, they are really concerned about their impact. What a 2 does that's wrong, or when they disintegrate, they're too concerned. They merge with the other. That's not good. An 8 has the opposite issue. They don't merge enough. So for them to work to 2, they start to connect with others. Now when they disintegrate, they go to 5, which removes them from their heart, puts them up here, and makes them paranoid. 5's the thinker. So Talk about that for a minute. So, because you've done such a huge evolution, I've watched you. So, how has going to 2 helped you? And can you think of also some ways you've been to 5 when you disintegrate as an 8?
Well, going to 2 has
that helped you?
it's helped me a great deal come to where I am now as a 43-year-old woman who's, hopefully more times than not understanding her impact and being conscious of that in the world out there with other people. So if I can dial it back when I sense fear or someone else is coming at me in a disintegrated way versus reacting from my disintegrated 8, I can go to 2 and go try to be loving and say, this is not about me, something's going on, let's check in with them.
Let me reach out to them, not let me fight them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Or defend myself from them.
And the truth is, where I used to come back out of fear and in a weakened state, I feel more powerful than ever when I'm calm and loving. Regardless of what they're doing, I can always control how I react. Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand that for the longest time.
It wasn't even an option.
No.
Right. It wasn't even a reality.
It was fight or flight. It was,
right.
Yeah. So reading about 2s, learning about 2s. I have a sister that's a 2.
There you go.
Understanding that's where I integrate to, that's what's really helped me come full circle to maybe more times than not be in an integrated place.
Well, you know what, for me, I see you doing this. If you, guys, this is how this can really help you. If you know the number that you integrate to, like she did, and then you read about it and you really understand it, we know when we feel off. Every human being, we know when we're stressed. Sometimes we forget and we need people around us to go, wait a minute.
Right.
You're unraveling.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are finally conscious of, wait a minute, I'm not in a good place right now. I'm really stressed. Going to the Enneagram and going to that number, trying to remember, I need to go to, it's almost like a mantra.
Well, and what was so interesting
it's a tool.
When I first started doing it, and this is a caution, but I'll also say everyone needs to do it this way, is I would overdo 2.
Yep.
I would go too far and get disintegrated into 2. You even a few times said, okay, even
thank you for the effort.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the effort, but you've taken it a little too far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that can happen, but I think it's okay. It's a part of learning how to get balanced.
It's getting a skill.
Yeah. You're developing something and you're not going to do it right the first time.
Right.
It's a process.
It's a process.
It's a process.
It's a journey and a process. Mm-hmm. You don't read this and go, okay, now I'm healed.
And I really had the benefit, I have a business partner who understands the Enneagram better than most and is a 4 and loves to be my mirror. And so...
And 4s have x-ray vision.
Right. And so I think that, it feels like it's taken us a long time to get where we are, but we've been very blessed to have each other to do this with.
Absolutely.
And so I would encourage any of you out there that are looking into the Enneagram and have close friends or partners in your life that they do it with you.
Yes.
Because you really need someone to hold you accountable. And
it's about consciousness and self-awareness.
Right. And as human beings, we're not all going to always be that way. You need people to hold the mirror up in order to grow.
Mm-hmm. That's right, because it's harder to see yourself. Yeah. It's easier to see someone else. So talk about how it has helped you. Has it helped you as much to understand what you disintegrate into to 5? Oh. Like, can you tell, do you know what I'm talking about? When I read the book, it says paranoia or thinking too much, or do you know what's that like when you're an 8?
That happens in relationships. You get paranoid. You feel like everyone's out to get you. You're like, that those people are being passive aggressive or manipulative, and this is all about how much can I hurt Ellen, or even in business, you can get very paranoid about how an industry partner might be being towards you and misreading things, and it can really get a situation off very fast if you don't stop and go, okay, am I being in my 5 right now, or is this actually happening? And again, having someone in it with you
check in
to say, okay, shoot me straight, Laura. Am I going to 5, or do you think this is actually happening? Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing is when she says, oh, no, this is happening.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing, too, because then I unleash the dogs on them.
Right.
Which is
Right.
Ellen, which is,
Right.
it's really, and I'll say, the thing about eights, and whenever I talk about the Enneagram and 8 comes up with random people, a lot of times people are like, oh, 8s, oh my gosh, awful, they're terrible. Oh. And it's, nothing could be further from the truth, in the sense that I guess when they're disintegrated, it might be one of the worst to be around.
Yes.
But I don't know. I've had mother-in-laws that are 2s. I don't have one, but I'm just saying. I don't know. Everybody, when they're disintegrated, can get pretty sticky. But 8s, when they are integrated, and I've seen you like this. The thing is, when you soften and you become vulnerable and you try to connect with someone else, what I think I've seen you discover is that you don't lose any authority or power.
You gain.
In fact, everybody, if you can tell the integrated 8 guys when everyone looks to them, when everyone is attracted to them, when everybody wants to know what they want to do, when everybody follows them. I mean, they are just the ultimate, they don't even have to speak, and people just, they feel the strength. I mean, I've seen that at our company. They feel the strength. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's not about how loud, or like Machiavelli was talking about fear. When an 8 is coming to you in love, it's you want them to follow. You want to follow them. Mm-hmm. I would say, and you felt that.
Oh, absolutely. More in the past year or two than ever. I've been able to see the opposite happen. Mm-hmm. For the first time, really.
And I've also seen you in her integration be like doing public service by seeking out the disintegrated 8s and sitting them down, because nobody can talk to them like you can, right?
Right. And
they're suffering.
From one 8 to another, generally speaking, most 8s, I would say, in this world, don't want to have a negative impact on anybody. They're doing the best they can, and they don't know how else to do it. So I had an opportunity in my professional world to develop friendships, relationships, business partnerships with other 8s, and on a few occasions been able to say, hey, let me tell you how I used to handle this, kind of similar to what you're doing, and let me tell you what's going to set you free, and it's actually going to feel a lot better, and you're going to have them follow you more. Mm-hmm. And I have had, grown men just bawl. And it was only because they already said, oh, God, we're so much alike, or I'm just like you, or, we had already identified that we were very similar to one another in personality drive. Mm-hmm. This particular individual not even knowing what the Enneagram is at the time.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they know, right? 'Cause
no.
The thing about an 8, they smell BS a mile away. Mm. It's like they scan, and they're like, if you're not telling the truth, or if you're not being straightforward, they know. Right. They also smell weakness.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an 8 would really only listen to another 8 when it comes to somebody taking their info, or maybe not only another 8, but I mean, I've had to be, luckily, and we've had shows on this, Ellen is also an Aries, right? Right. A lot of 8s are Aries. Mm-hmm. The two go hand in hand. But just, it's been tough for me at times to have to stand my ground with her. But I think one of the reasons why, but I have an Aries ascendant and a Taurus moon. So I can stand my ground. I have that strength.
Yes.
But I think one of the reasons why we could get into business together and why Ellen wanted to work with me right off the bat was that I think she sensed I was strong enough. And I was honest.
Right.
And it wouldn't work otherwise. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just don't.
You have to push back on an 8 to earn their respect.
Right. And I think what we've had to work through is me asking Ellen, can you can I not have to push
Can
back
we not
anymore?
have to do it that way?
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about just a few famous eights. I want to roll this list off because I think it's kind of
I
interesting.
mean, besides me,
Besides you,
such an 8 thing to say.
it's such an eight thing to say. You
Right.
took the words right out of my mouth.
Right.
They all think they're famous, even if they're not famous. But to be honest, most of them are.
Yeah.
They're famous in whatever circle they run in. Okay, so I've got this list here, but I'm kind of going to go through some of the disintegrated ones, and then and it's a matter of opinion, and then we'll get into some integrated ones. But Al Capone disintegrated, and Al Capone, guys, was famously paranoid. Famously paranoid. He could probably have been in history books diagnosed as a paranoid, but
One would argue it probably saved his life on more than one occasion, though.
that's such an eight thing to say. It's completely justified. He should have been. Oh my God.
It's a hell of his own making.
Well, listen, Napoleon Bonaparte, there's an example of biting off more than you can chew. Eights do that. And you know what? I'm sure to the day he took his last breath, he believed he could come back and conquer more. I mean, it's that I'll never give up thing. We talked about this in the Aries segment, but I'm going to say it again. Scarlett O'Hara. 8. 8, 8, 8. Walked into the room, everybody stopped, turned around. Tell her she can't do something. She does it. Perfect example of an 8. Margaret Thatcher. And if you ever saw that movie about Margaret Thatcher,
I do.
I love that movie. And it really talks about when she's integrated, and it shows scenes where she's disintegrated. I mean, it
Right.
really does the whole gamut. Donald Trump. Go check out my Trump episodes. It's all there. I would venture to say he's disintegrated. But that's another interesting thing about an 8. Let's talk about this just for a second. 8s are also the types that can reverse course more quickly, I think.
Right.
Just get it fit, like bam. Wouldn't you say? Like once you get something, it's like, okay,
Yeah, my prayer is just that he will get it.
yeah, right.
Because if he does, if he can integrate,
he will.
he can be a benefit for this country.
Right.
If he doesn't,
It
God
could be
help
bad.
us.
God help us. Right. So we're holding that.
I'm going to hold a vision that
We're
he's
gonna
going to
hold-
integrate.
We're going to hold that. Courtney Love. No words necessary. Pablo Picasso. Don't want to get on the other end of his anger. About 25 books written about that. Here's one of my favorites on this list, and I didn't know this, and when I read it, I just smiled. Winston Churchill. The other 8 was Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
The other president that was 8.
And they were in world, obviously, literally saved the world together. Literally kept
From another 8.
from another 8.
Yeah.
Actually, Hitler, are you talking about Hitler?
Yeah.
Hitler was a 6.
Really?
Yep,
Oh.
that's what they say. Yep. Which is, God, I can't wait to get to that show and talk about that. Because I get what you're saying. But he was more of a paranoid, cultish, it was soupy.
Oh.
Crazy, but not an 8. And that's what I love. Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, they talked about those fireside chats. That Winston Churchill literally, you read these stories about him, their country is getting bombed. Countries are falling down around them in the war. And literally, Winston Churchill would get on the radio or stand with his cigar and just go, "We got this. Calm down. Keep calm and carry on." Winston Churchill.
I will promise you, he truly believed
He
that.
believed it.
And his energy that he put out into the world was that, and that is a big part of why.
They all listened, and Franklin and followed and believed it, and then it manifested. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the fireside chats, I think it held our entire country together through one of the most horrible times in our history. His fireside chats, he would, when he spoke, people knew he was present, they knew he was leading, they knew he was in charge.
Right.
So that's the best example of an 8. In closing, I want to just talk about one final 8 because, again, I say this every show, but the reason I'm doing this show is, and I call it the real ethereal, I'm a Capricorn. I want it to be practical, you guys. I want, if you watch the show, that everybody who watches this show at some point or another here's one thing that they can take away from it and maybe make their life just a little bit better. And Ellen talked about coming on the show and talked about how that's why she wants to be here, because you've already helped people with your story.
I hope so.
But hopefully there's an 8 out there watching this, or somebody's married to an 8 or has a child who's an 8 who sees this and goes, wow, there's a way to grow and be proud and also heal, with this energy. But I want to talk about one resource, and that is Brene Brown. And if you don't know who Brene Brown is, you need to look her up. She was famous for a TED Talk she did on vulnerability, which is an 8's path to integration.
Right.
Brene Brown was a Yosemite Sam, firing her guns off. I'm in charge. From Texas, no less, too. She's proudly from Texas. Blustery 8. And she hit her wall, realized vulnerability was her path to healing and true strength. And she has one of the most watched TED Talks, you guys.
No, it's a great TED Talk.
Millions and millions and millions of views. And, there we have it. People can't look away from an 8.
I identified with it immediately.
It's all about vulnerability. But when she says it, being an 8,
Right.
you believe it. And you feel the strength and the power, and you just want to follow her. So anybody, if you're interested in this topic or just us talking about this energy, watch Brene Brown. She's such a resource. Any of her books, and especially her TED Talk,
Right.
is a really great thing. I think we've summed it up pretty good. I would love to hear from you guys. I'd love comments. If you guys write a comment, Ellen's going to know about it, and Ellen can chime in and write back, and we can have a discussion about this. If you want to know more resources to go to, I'll be more than happy. Get on the Vimeo chat, and I'll be glad to talk to you guys about that. I thank you so much for watching. I love the series. I've gotten a lot of good feedback about it, so we'll be doing all the numbers, you guys. So stay tuned for those shows.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming on. And will you come on again?
Absolutely.
My work wife.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.